Well, welcome back to episode 2 of season 2 of our PPDM Data Wise Guys podcast. We're really excited about the guest that we have with us today, Sushma Bahn, and we're really looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have around data management, and particularly from Sushma's perspective. I'd like to just give a little bit of a background as to who Sushma is and why she's here today. So Sushma is the chair of the SPE Digital Science and Engineering Analytics Tech Board. That's a lot of words for a board, but it's a very important one. And she's also the board of directors at Ikon Science. She's the former chief data officer at for subsurface and wells at Royal Dutch Shell. And what I think is really exciting too is she's also the founder of the Youth Leadership Development Program here in Houston. It's a nonprofit organization to develop Indo-American youth leaders, which I think is just really important when we talk about data management as a whole, is not just all the issues with people, process, and technology, but also how do we engage the next generation. So Sushma, welcome. I'm really excited to have you here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're having today.
Matt, thank you so much. And I'm really thrilled to be here. I've known PPDM for many years. And again, the colleagues who are on the forum are also very well known. So thank you for the opportunity.
No, absolutely. Well, hey, let's jump right in. I wanted to start off, really drawn from your background, at your time at Shell, as well as with the data boards that you're involved in. I think we can all agree that data is obviously a key asset to any company, especially with a lot of companies going to being more data driven and data focused. But I think where the struggle is a lot of times there's a challenge in putting a value on that data. Well, where do you see that the methods coming into place to put that validation, or that valuation is probably a better way to say it. And I'd be curious to see, how would you prioritize that?
Yeah, so Matt, I think that's a very important area to focus on. I would say quantifying a value from data or data initiatives, data management has always been challenging. And unless you can showcase return on investment, most of the business teams or organizations may be reluctant to support data initiatives. But in the recent years, with the focus on digitalization and data strategies being established, in Shell, I can say every business unit now has focus on data and digital. So I think there has been a mind shift. But needless to say, when you're prioritizing between other business initiatives that show you clear revenue, sales, again, the data initiatives might be, difficult to quantify. So one of the areas that we worked on was wells, reservoirs, and facility management. And our one of the key mantras was what we measure, we can improve. And interestingly, in that area, it was our assets and businesses that had nailed down that data was the key necessity for their success. So basically, WRFM looks at maximizing production from existing assets. They know they have the reserves. All they have to do is enable the production. And as these teams were coming together, whether they were G&G, geology, geophysics, production engineer, reservoir engineers, and so forth, the lack of data or not having the right data was a key issue. So it became easier for us to say, okay, let's use data as a lever. But also when we had to justify the investments, like we are spending X thousands or millions of dollars on a project, we still had to have some kind of quantification of how it relates. So what we used in WRFM perspective, because really you couple your data initiatives to the end goals. And for us, production was where we were focusing on. So we're having worked with reservoir engineers and the key business folks, we had nailed down in a very conservative manner that 1% of the production, additional production, would be attributed to data management and its value add. Now, I had seen earlier in EAG that they had professed saying that as much as 10% of the production can be due to, data and data initiatives. So as a company or as an organization, in petroleum engineering, we accepted that. And as we were doing, let's say, we took certain $1 million spent, we saw how much was the production, and we were going back to our executives and showing that. So that is one of the ways to kind of accept. And I was recently talking to Jim about carbon sequestration or the area of ESG. Now, tax credits, if you can show how getting your data and that visibility and transparency attributes to the area of tax credits, so you can actually couple. And it has to be agreed with the business and the area that you're focusing on.
That is really interesting. I really liked how you tied even just that 1% of production. I mean, that sounds like a small number, but when but to your point, when you're talking about millions of dollars,
Yeah,
in costs and investment, that 1% makes a big difference, especially when you start adding that across multiple wells, multiple platforms.
Let me give you again a quick example. Like you can say how you accelerate. So you could also showcase in time savings and resource utilization and others. So we had, when we were working in unconventionals, it would take us like 2 months to prepare our data and go for a well review. And as we started doing some digitalization and all the data and information was accessible through something called eval books, we were able to down that time to 2 weeks, and eventually in one day we could do several wells. So you could quickly track, and that's the way to quantify. If you're showing savings, it's not only the bottom line, but lesser number of people are used. How efficient it is, the time savings. So that's another way.
Sushma, this is Tim. I like that last analogy because I was about to ask what actual activity did the value was it attributable to, and so explains that a little better, I think. Thank you.
No, I think that's a key point is being able to directly tie the data to these measurable attributes, right? And I just heard I'm a big fan of the whole people process technology, right? Kind of leveraging those three around data. And you touched on all of those in just this example. But I wanted to also, maybe kind of turn it, with the next question, because, in order to be able to see these types of results, and these quantifiable results, you've got to have people very much engaged in that process. And so, from a perspective, when you were at Shell, what did you have in place from a development perspective for your people? So, in other words, how did you develop that data management skill set and really promote that, not just to the people doing the work, but then also to those that would be receiving the ultimate value from that?
Yeah, I think that's again a very important area to think about, because you do need the right skilled people. And data management, as many of my colleagues here would know, has existed for many years, as long as we have had geophysics, petrophysics, and all the data that has been collected. But it wasn't very well professionalized. So over the years, and I've had 32 years career with Shell, we have seen these I would say waves of focus on data and data professionals. And I would say it took a lot of influencing and working with the leaders from different areas, IT, information technology, business. Obviously, if you're working with wells development, exploration area, they already, I think, understand the value of data. So we were eventually able to establish what's called technical data management. It was a professional discipline, just like we have petrophysics, reservoir engineering, production technology, wells, and so forth. And giving that area a whole structured approach. And we had appointed a global chief, so global discipline head for technical data management area, who had a global remit. And then we were able to focus on certain areas. So we had somebody who focused on seismic, and that person was called the focal point, or the chief for that area. We had likewise exploration. So I was like leading wells, reservoirs, and facility management. So when they set that accountability, then you started working with the colleagues who were specialists in those areas, who had the know-how, and you also started looking at the curriculum. What kind of skills do you want? I remember when we had the first global discipline head position, we were talking with University of Houston and Rice and other colleagues from the industry, Chevron, Exxon, and so forth, to see how do we have curriculums that enable, because there were as such no degree courses in data management. So I'm sure Jim and others would know that since then a lot has been progressed. I know in Rice University they have data management arena, or within their G&G courses, or there's energy related courses, and they have that. So again, it's like formulating a strategy that'll structure it, then identifying who would be leading those areas, just like we do in other areas like petrophysics and reservoir engineering. And then having the people in those areas where you help them progress from where they are. So there was a little bit of going through assessment, bringing people in, skilling them, training them, and so forth. So that was how we developed it in Shell.
Well, Sushma, this is Jim. If I can just kind of jump in here and kind of add to your answer. I think there are a number of larger organizations that have created, quote unquote, using the HR language, career ladders, and the career ladders would have competency expectations, and some of those can be related to courses. Certainly PPDM has been involved in the education side of it for a long time, certification of data manager professionals. But there are few university courses, as you said. I mean, if you look all around, I think there's some courses at Tulsa. There's the Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen, IFP in Paris. I mean, there are a few actually degree programs that you can try to find, but most of it is maybe a course here, a course there. An organization will try to sponsor it. But I was at the PPDM meeting in Denver just this week, and this isn't my comment, so don't blame me. But one of the individuals at the meeting said that the data manager meetings tend to be more like AARP sessions than they are leadership development for young professionals. Wow. It seems that one of the things that we really gain expertise is through experience in data management, that it is doing the job rather than taking a course or getting a degree that makes a data manager professional. Yet that begs the question of how do you get young people into to be an interest in this sort of a career when maybe other careers have maybe more star power within an organization or get promotions better or something. Can you say address a little bit, since your interest in development of young professionals, which is obviously well established, how do you get young people interested in data management?
Well, I think it's a difficult question to answer because there are a lot of competing opportunities, and if you're looking at especially oil and gas, there might be mental models where people may not be so ready. So it's really about increasing the awareness, making people understand what are the opportunities and how the career paths may progress. I can speak for myself. When I was when I started in Shell, I was more in the IT applications area, but then I moved into different, from applications to project management, and then I focused in the data area. I think we just have to start showing that how these data career paths are now connected to the bottom line. That's what is attractive to these people. If we can say, how we are solving the energy problems of the world, how we are also stepping into environmental arena, the sustainability, and how this the whole data management is a key lever. So they have to be able to see the value add, and also we have to showcase the professional paths, the role models, how it has succeeded. One of the things, Matt, that has happened is especially in the upstream business, the data was very much confined in the business, like we had wells development. But now we see there's IT roles coming up. So as I mentioned in the beginning, with the thrust on data and digitalization, which is sort of buzzing all across, we had new roles come up, which was like general manager of digitalization in one area and another. So I think they have to be able to see as they develop and build their skills, acumen, and cross it with business know-how also, then they can go as high as executive ranks. So, and again, there's no direct path, Jim, but I think we have to showcase, first of all, how it is meaningful and useful, and also the technology, they get to work with a lot of new things, which are not just being offered by tech sector, and maybe the jobs are quite secure. We have seen the huge layoffs from the tech sector, so which has made people think, yeah, the salaries might be very attractive and the culture, but again, there has been a lot of steadfast jobs and opportunities. So we have to combine, make it attractive that they see the opportunities, the technology being used, the career paths, and how they can progress.
This is John Jacobs. I guess to follow up, and you sort of raised this when you started to talk about your background in development and going through the IT organization. I think one of the key things that I found during my career was struggling does data management belong in IT, or does it belong inside the asset itself? So where is it most appropriate?
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting question. We struggled with that in my career, seeing pull from each side. I personally think proximity to the business is much better. So if you're, like subsurface, then being closer to exploration wells and development, because it's not just knowing the technology and the systems, it's understanding the processes, it's being able to work with the SMEs and the PTEs, and being very closely integrated in that fabric of the organization. But also then you could have the dotted line to IT. I think companies have worked different ideas, but in the subsurface upstream area, I still see that proximity is very important, because it is the data on that side we are talking about is pretty complex. You have to be constantly working with the experts. I haven't seen one person in data management who knew the whole value chain, from early exploration to wells to development. So that means, seismic data, log data, RE data, production technology. So you have to be, having that multidisciplinary technical approach. So I feel that is very important, but needless to say, you also need to have that cross connect to IT, because they are instrumental in bringing, the architectural advancement, the cloud technology. We talked about, we hear about OSDU or SDU, and that is jointly owned between business and IT. So that collaboration has to be strongly there, but I personally feel it's very strongly connected to the business. In other areas, it might be a little bit, okay to have in the IT by itself.
I like one thing you said too, and you said it earlier when you were talking about the career path, but you mentioned how you setting the accountability, right? And I think that ties in even when you talk about it from the standpoint of getting the business to own data management, which I think we all agree is it should reside there, and that accountability becomes so important, right? That they feel that sense of ownership to drive it, to direct it, and then to engage with other groups like IT to help, progress it. But I want to sort of turn that a little bit and ask, so, that's that accountability and that ownership, within the company, within Shell, or within, any of these organizations on the business side. But when we look at some of the professional organizations that are out there, and specifically, our organization, PPDM, we just went through a rebranding where now, we're focused on being the global energy data professionals, right? So we're looking
Mhm.
at, kind of all aspects of energy, new energy such as renewables, how that ties into the environment and the data challenges there, and then also incorporating all these new technologies that are coming into play. Where do you, so knowing that there, data management has a place and an ownership within the business, confines of these companies, but where do you see, an organization like PPDM uh, providing that value and that capability? What should we be looking to do?
So, PPDM is again, it's a very valuable platform because it's a consortium that allows various companies and experiences, know-how to come together at one point. So I think it's a big lever to influence, things like standardization, taking areas of data and data foundation and trying to address them collectively. For example, I'll just say right now there's a huge buzz about AI and Chat GPT, and there are also misinformation and concerns. So, how do you help as a forum to examine some of these things and bring, illuminate and help broaden insights? I think that's a big area. I'm very passionate about standardization. I know that we struggle with some complex data types. I'll name one like pore pressure prediction. It's sitting in certain system, and then you want it to be standardized. Now, if you want to leverage new things we are talking about, AI, machine learning, and just analyze data and get the value add, it's very important that foundation elements are done. And I think that's where I still see the gaps and the opportunities. So again, PPDM can, be a great lever to heighten the focus on some of the common issues we are seeing. What are the gaps? In my experience, the early GNG, like I'm saying, geology, geophysics, petrophysics, those areas were very nicely addressed. There were a lot of standards. But as you start moving down the value chain towards safety critical data, KSO logs, I said PPP, um, leak off tests, other areas, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And every company does not have to spend time and effort doing it individually. We do it in our little own silos. So PPDM can be that glue that brings people together, examines them. And also as we get position on certain things, it's an area to celebrate successes. Data management is still growing. That recognition, that visibility, I would say lacked for the last 2 or so decades. It's only now that you can see with the focus on digitalization, every meeting starts with the mention of word data. And that's music to my ears. Every executive talks about it. It's in our corporate strategies. So we have to start, that enthuses the people who are in that arena. So there are certain areas that can be worked. And again, PPDM can cross connect to other industry organizations like SPE, and you have geosciences organization to, to drive forward issues that still face us. And the aspirations we have, I was talking to Jim in the area of ESG or sustainability. How do we have the right metrics? What are the standards? How do we bring the transparency using data for the aspirations companies has to meet the, zero carbon footprint, for example? So we can drive some of those things and, encourage our industry partners, vendors, all to team up. I think that's a big area that PPDM can enable and focus on.
Well, so this is Jim again. I think you had another great lead in for something. I think some of the challenges that you are facing in the data science, engineering, analytics part of SPE are similar to PPDM's challenge to reach new data management communities in the value chain of renewables and environment and the sustainability and the other areas you're talking about. So maybe you could give us some advice here. It seems to me, I mean, clearly PPDM has a long and strong history in the foundation of data around subsurface activities in the oil and gas. I mean, that was your job for a while. That and a number of people are. You can go in an organization, you can see the data manager for subsurface data, right? That's a frequently identified job title. But as I'm working more in this area of, well, so what about emissions? What about air quality? What about produced water quality? And who's looking after that data? We know there's data, but we're also finding it's in another place other than where PPDM has built its strong community and strong reputation. It belongs in so PPDM has to reach another community. It has to make new friends in another place. And then we have these standards, platforms, quality, all the governance, all these issues that we've been talking about for decades. Same. It seems to me, and same in data science, that when you look at an SB's community, the first thing you think about is reservoir, and then maybe the next thing you think about is drilling and completions. But data analytics really is one of these foundational things that can impact almost anything anybody does that's an SBE member or is part of the industry. What lessons could you give us in reaching out into other communities other than, say, what's obviously the core of, the business of that organization?
Yeah, so I would say, if you have worked or established yourselves in the upstream area, which has really complex data types, hundreds of data types, and being able to use the practices, how do you set the standards? How do you set the business rules, let's say, for quality management? Same practices can be used, in the other areas. So I would say, from Ikon Science also, I'll just chip in. They are very much focused on the G&G area, but I can see like in the carbon sequestration, well, same things. How do you help companies get the tax credits? So we have to go with that same mindset that if we have this good understanding and we have established it in the early cycle of the value chain in upstream, it's also applicable in the other areas. And Jim, for that, the key thing I see is spanning across to other disciplines, connecting with them. The environmental area is growing, sustainability is growing. So taking those learnings and practices of, which is about data access, data quality, data integration, data visualization, which has been done so profoundly in the subsurface, it's applicable there. So I think we can kickstart a lot of things where people may be struggling. And I'll give you an example. I had a colleague who worked with me in subsurface, and she's now gone to the downstream in Shell's area, a very proficient data manager, and she's applying those same data management excellence principles in a different business area. So I think we have to go with that mindset that definitely the discipline knowledge and domain knowledge is important, but the data science, data management values and the experiences that we have gathered are very much useful in the other emerging areas that are coming up. So even like your new energies, wind, solar, do they have data management all standardized, and are they going to be capitalizing on it the same way we did in the other areas? So that cross application or cross pollination of ideas and practices is very much viable, I would say.
Go ahead, please.
I'm just going to briefly say, this is Tim again, that just looking at it from a 30,000-foot perspective, interestingly enough, the oil and gas industry is quite a bit further ahead than these other areas. Looking at it from a broad engineering perspective or a broad science perspective, environmental sciences, sustainability, they're all searching for things and ideas because they don't exactly know where to go in lots of these cases, and they're struggling to make data sets match up or be accessible or be managed more clearly. So just throw that out there.
Yeah, and quickly, like establishing governance of data. What is your critical data for a certain process? Be able to nail it down to, let's say, your top 20 first, set the business rules, set the foundation, who has the experience to work that. And you can use similar approach in other areas which are just coming up. I see a lot of discussion and struggle in how do you do, let's say, the emissions area, methane area, or the area is so big that you have to sort of narrow it down to, what is the most value add.
Right.
But those practices can be definitely applied. And Jim,
Right.
what I like is connecting to different, different disciplines and different emerging areas within
Yeah.
energy sector.
Yeah, sometimes the connectors are not quite there. What we're trying to get to.
Exactly. Wow, well, I can't believe it. 30 minutes have flown by. This was a great discussion. Sushma, this was I was taking lots of notes just because it was really interesting to get your perspective. And I think here at the end, just how you wrapped it up, and to tie it back to a lot of these emerging industries, and how there's a lot of foundational work that still needs to be done. And I think that's a good place to really end, is to say as much work has been progressed, especially in upstream. There's a lot of great lessons learned that now can be applied into these new energy markets and the renewables, and the sustainability, that they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can start back over with using these concepts that you so eloquently laid out for us. Thank you very much for your time today. This was really great. We would definitely love to have you come back sometime and continue. There's a whole other set of questions I think we could ask in another session at another time. So, and obviously to our Data Wise guys, once again, thank you guys for your comments, for your questions. You always bring some good insight and help us to frame this in a way that we can see how do we move forward. So once again, with that, I will just say, thank you very much, Sushma, for being on with us today, and to the audience, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. And we definitely would love to hear your feedback. If you could let us know, go out to our ppdm.org website, give us your feedback, give us your comments. Let us know if there's other topics, or if there's another guest you would like us to interview. We would love that feedback. And with that, I would say everyone have a great day.
Thank you.